call to order the work session special meeting of the York County School Board for Monday, September the 12th. We are back in school, everybody. Hopefully you had a wonderful summer because it's gone now. We are back to work.
Thank you, Barbara.
I know. The reality of it is all set in, right?
Oh, gosh.
So I know we're going to have a lot of presentations about the beginning of school. So briefly, I'm going to move to Dr. Shandor and let him bring us up to date with the opening of school.
Wonderful. Good evening, Ms. Halen, board members, and community. We are back in school. We've had a wonderful start to our school year. We're in the second week, and this evening I want to share a few updates relating to the opening of school. Last week I had the opportunity to visit all 19 schools, as well as our maintenance and transportation departments. I was able to participate in the excitement of the new school year along with our students and teachers. I do want to extend congratulations to our transportation, maintenance departments, all of our school administrators, all of our teachers, and our entire staff for doing such a great job last week. We really had a seamless start to the school year. I did want to share some information that related to the beginning of the year. Over this summer, our team, our maintenance team, and Mr. Dolex here this evening, cleaned over 1.7 million square feet, which is all 19 of our schools. I also want to send out a shout out to all of our maintenance and custodial staff for their hard work and flexibility this summer, not only with Waller Mill Elementary School, but also with Magruder and Yorktown Elementary Schools, modular buildings, and painting the Grafton Complex and Tabb Middle School. All of these projects required the alteration of regular cleaning and work schedules, so certainly kudos to this group. Also, this summer, 160 buses were inspected and underwent maintenance and service over the summer by our transportation team. We had a wonderful start to the school year. Of course, we had our typical snags here and there with some of our routes, but overwhelmingly, we really had a wonderful beginning of the school year. On the first day of school, our school buses made over 3,500 stops to pick over 10,000 students and traveled over 8,400 miles, and that was just the first day of school. Additionally, renovations were completed at Waller Mill Elementary School. We're pleased with the majority of the work that was completed to get us ready for our students on day one. I do need to share, though, it did take hard work by many people to have that school ready for Tuesday. Many of the people in this room were involved with carrying furniture and moving boxes and those type of things. Ms. Goodwin and her team, as well as custodians, maintenance staff members, our cabinet members, directors, administrators from other schools, the spouses of everybody, family members, so it really took the whole community to get working. All of our teachers and staff members worked incredibly hard for us to be there on day one for students, so really kudos to everyone in this room and all the folks who were there. As you know, summer's a busy time for professional development, and Dr. Carroll is going to cover some information related to this later in the evening. All of this work prepared us for welcoming 12,390 students on the first day of school. I'll say it again, 12,390 students. It is important to note that the enrollment number has grown every day. So today we're at the five-day mark, obviously, in the 10-day head count process. And today, as of today, we're at 12,537 students. We monitor this very closely. Several folks at the table, as well as the chairs behind me, our directors, participate in our head count process. So in 5 days, we've gained 147 students. We're about 83 students short of our projection. Our projection was 12,620 students. Finally, I shared this last year. I think it's important to share this again with the board and the community. An interesting fact, we welcomed 885 of our students as members to the class of 2029. And that's our kindergarten class, of course. So this is up, which is interesting, this is up 80 students from last year's class, the class of 2028. Additionally, many of our school board office team members were in all of our 19 schools this past week, and this will continue throughout the year. They've had the opportunity to observe our outstanding teachers, many of them who are reviewing expectations as well as jumping into instruction. Student engagement was fantastic at each of our schools. Again, all in all, we had an extremely productive first week of school. So this concludes my opening school report. Are there any comments at this time?
Go ahead, Cindy.
Well, I have a comment and a question. My comment is thank you so much to the staff, everyone getting Waller Mill ready. This was over Labor Day weekend, which
Was
should have
indeed.
been a 3-day holiday for folks, and you all worked. So I think the entire community is so appreciative of everything you did. My question is about the number of students. Last year, of course, the big topic was enrollment at York Elementary and Magruder. How many of these students are new to York Elementary? Are we foreseeing a problem there with overcrowding?
I'm going to ask Dr. Carroll.
Right now, no. Yorktown's looking very good. They've got, they're just under 700 students, and there's no classes that are significantly above the target.
It's important to note that with the modular unit there now, we've been able to get kids out of the hallways, off the stage, off some of those common areas. I was over there last week and this week with teachers and students, and the teachers love the modular. I know the board members have been there to see the one at Magruder as well. I mean, it's like you're inside the building. They're beautiful, a lot of good space in there for learning.
So now that we know that York Elementary is in good shape for this coming year, are there any other schools that are overcrowded or nearing the edge of numbers?
Well, as schools as a whole, no. And we're watching every one of those target elementary groups, each grade level and those ratios based on either if they're K2 where we're shooting for 20, 3 through 5 where they're shooting for 25. Out of those 60 data points that we watch, we're exactly where we were last year with 15 that are above the target, 45 at or below the target. The numbers look good. They're much more even than we saw last year. We had a lot of 1.3, 1.5 over the ratios, and we're only seeing a handful of those right now. Okay.
Follow up with that, if I may. As you bring information to us regarding the students, we always talk about the average class size. But to get the average, you're going to have some very high and some very low. So will you be able, I guess I said, would you bring to us the specific class sizes also? So if there's those that we have a concern about, we can plan to do something to counteract that.
Yes, and I think I'm slated to do a report the next work session
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
And we can look at that. I know one of the ones that is our worst ratio. I talked to her on the way here today, and they have a para in every one of those classrooms and another para that feeds, looks at the whole grade level. So there's a lot of support. So one of those classes, there's 4 paras in one class at one time.
And which school is that?
That's Seaford.
Do we have?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
Do we have positions that we've held back?
Yes.
Okay. So we have that in place if the enrollment continues to grow in any of the buildings.
Yes,
Because
if-
capacity, we got to have the classroom space for that too.
Right, but we're watching the overall budget number too, because the budget's based on that projection.
Can I have a follow-up question to the Seaford enrollment? Are you seeing an increased enrollment at Seaford because parents have moved from YES?
I couldn't answer that question. We'd have to look at that.
Yeah, well,
I don't think it's.
yeah. And to answer your question about
Kindergarten? Okay.
some of the other growth, I think we had, how many extra students at Mount Vernon? Was it 40?
Mount Vernon, we added 2 kindergarten teachers and a 5th grade teacher, so we've had significant growth at Mount
Significant
Vernon.
growth at Mount Vernon.
I think as we talk about the growth in Magruder and Yorktown, the schools are comfortable now, but I'm sure Dr. James will agree, those areas that we talk about haven't been built out yet. So the number of people coming in has yet to be seen once they do the build out of all these neighborhoods. I think the one thing that as we begin the school year, that we have had such great successes this past year with the SOLs and student success, that we don't want to lose anything. So whatever we need to do, stay on top of that to maintain what we have and then to build stronger in those areas would be wonderful. Mr. Mathis, you've been quiet down there. We won't let you get in. Any comment, question?
No, I'm not going to run hackneyed operation. A couple of questions I have were already asked. So. But I would like to piggyback on the excellent work that the Waller Mill there to get over the finish line there. It was definitely 110, 150% effort there to, with the late call to finally got occupancy and now run. So that was outstanding.
It was one of those days where I think it was a Thursday before Labor Day, I was out there and walking, and Mark Shearhart, he looked like he had been through the ringer 3 or 4 times. And, but it took, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. There's going to be a way, but oh my God, inside I was just thinking this is not going to happen. I think he even told the superintendent, I guess we're going to have 1 day possible delay here. But then seeing the work that he leaded with the construction crew out there, and the team coming in, when I went out there on that first day of school, and Dr. Guy comes down the hallway and Ms. Skinner comes down the hallway, but I'm sitting there thinking, good gracious, we're up and rolling. It was an entirely different world in that building.
It was a tremendous team effort and accomplishment.
Just
And I think-
unbelievable.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, it was unbelievable. But it took that team, like Cindy said, it took everybody to hit the ground running with boots on the ground, and it made it happen.
It just speaks to the quality of the people that work here. I mean, when I'm standing at midnight in one of those big storage, what's it called? Connex boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm in line, and the person in front of me is this guy, and it's midnight, and we're all drenched with sweat next to all of our maintenance folks and our electricians and our plumbers and our carpenters and all of these folks. I mean, it took everybody, and I couldn't be more proud of the group. And folks,
We're all proud.
Spouses were there, and we were proud of them. So really brought the team together. So
That's great,
Yep.
that's great, that's great. Fantastic, fantastic. Again, to sum up, we thank everybody for all that they have done for this opening of schools.
we'll provide that information regarding class sizes at the next work
Okay,
session.
okay. Move now to a strategic plan update. And before we move on, the one thing I neglected to say, Dr. George is out of town. That's why he's not with us tonight, so we wish him well and to hurry back, but I did want to indicate that. Thank you. Now, strategic plan update.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Board members, this evening we're going to have a strategic plan update, status update on Goal 1, and Dr. Stephanie Guy, our Chief Academic Officer, is going to start the presentation, and she's also going to introduce 2 other directors who are going to participate in the presentation. Turn it over to Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Good evening, Mrs. Haywood, members of the board. Tonight, we will be providing the strategic plan status update to many of the objectives listed under Goal 1 of the strategic plan. I'll provide a broad overview of the division's success with respect to accreditation and the federal AMOs, and then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Skinner and Mr. Bladue to address our performance at the elementary and secondary level. In addition to the data, they'll identify specific actions taken to which we attribute our successes and next steps for identified areas of growth. Goal 1 of the York County School Division Strategic Plan states that York County students will consistently demonstrate growth and excellence in the skills and knowledge needed to be productive citizens. Under Goal 1 of the strategic plan, there are 4 objectives we will address this evening: state and federal targets, 3rd grade reading, advanced studies diplomas, advanced placement exam results. You'll see each of these objectives individually as we move through the presentation. The first objective we will address this evening speaks to our performance on the SOLs. Prior to this school year, there were 2 standards we were required to meet for state accountability purposes. First, a school's state accreditation rating reflects overall achievement, the performance of all students combined in the 4 core academic areas of English, math, history, and science. High schools must also meet an additional minimum benchmark for graduation completion. Pass rates for accreditation are 70% for all content areas except English, which is 75%. Schools in which students meet or exceed all achievement objectives established by the Virginia Board of Education are rated as fully accredited. This standard is still part of the state accountability system. Second, the federal No Child Left Behind Act, NCLB, previously required states to establish annual measurable objectives, AMOs, for raising reading and mathematics performance for specific subgroups. Additionally, rather than fixed targets as you have with accreditation, the AMO targets increased each year. In December of 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, replaced NCLB. Under ESSA, states will develop new federal accountability systems this year to be implemented in 2017-2018 school year. So as we report our performance tonight, We will speak to our performance on AMO targets, but recognize that these targets are no longer part of the state accountability system. We will continue to use these previously established targets to monitor student achievement for all subgroups. So the good news is, we anticipate that all 19 York County schools will be fully accredited for FY17. We're proud of this accomplishment and would like to recognize our hardworking students, dedicated teachers, and administrators, and supportive York County families. It is because of the collective efforts of these groups that we continue to achieve at high levels year after year. Ms. Skinner and Mr. Vladu will share additional details regarding school performance in just a moment. So let me shift to the federal AMOs. This slide provides an overview of our performance on the federal AMO targets. As I shared previously, these AMO targets are no longer part of the state accountability system. So in the middle column labeled federal AMO status, you will see not applicable next to each school. However, we have identified the targets missed based on the previously established AMOs for FY17. Please note at the bottom of the slide, I've defined which students are included in each GAP group. GAP Group 1 includes students with disabilities, limited English proficient, and economically disadvantaged students combined. GAP Group 2, Black students. GAP Group 3, Hispanic students. You'll hear references to these groups throughout the presentation. At the division level, we missed only one of 27 AMO targets, specifically for students with disabilities in English. At the elementary level, 3 schools missed one or more AMOs. These schools include Coventry, Magruder, and Yorktown Elementary. As a comparison to last year all of our elementary schools met all AMOs. At the middle school level, 2 schools met all AMO targets, Tabb Middle and Yorktown Middle. This is an improvement from the previous year where we had no middle schools meet all AMO targets. At the high school level, 4 of 5 met all AMO targets. Bruton High School missed 1 target in mathematics for students with disabilities. Last year was the first year that all 5 high schools met all 27 AMO targets. It was the first time in 3 years. So let's take a closer look at the growth we saw across the division this past year. As you take a look at the next few slides, I want to draw your attention to a few things. In this graph, our pass rates for 2014 are in blue. Pass rates for 2015 are in green, and pass rates for 2016 are in purple. The AMO targets are black. You'll see this color scheme repeated throughout the presentation. So how did we do in reading? The division met or exceeded all federal AMO targets with the exception of students with disabilities. While we demonstrated growth from the previous year, we just missed R10 by 0.26, which is approximately 1/4 of 1 percentage point. As a reminder to the public, R10 is a reduction in the failure rate by 10%. Additionally, I'd like you to take a closer look at the purple bars representing 2016 as compared to the green 2015. We demonstrated growth in all but 2 AMO subgroups, GAP Group 2 and Asian students. And these 2 subgroups remain substantially unchanged. Also, the growth in FY16 is on top of the tremendous growth demonstrated from FY14 to FY15. In math, the division not only met or exceeded all federal AMO targets this year, but again, we demonstrated growth in every AMO subgroup except one, which was Asian students. And that subgroup held steady at 95.6%. We also demonstrated almost 5 percentage points growth for students with disabilities on top of the double-digit growth demonstrated in the previous year. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Ms. Skinner, our Director of Elementary Instruction, to provide more detailed information regarding our performance at the elementary level.
Good evening. Thank you for providing me this opportunity tonight to share and give you an update on our performance at the elementary school level. As Dr. Guy shared previously, we anticipate that all of our elementary schools will be fully accredited again this year. This slide illustrates some of those accomplishments that we have achieved. Even with the many gains we made last year, 5 of our schools continue to show improvements in English this year, and all 10 held steady or continue to show gains in math. Additionally, 7 of our 10 schools had scores in the 90s in all 4 subject areas this year. Finally, I'd like to highlight Waller Mill Elementary School. Waller Mill had the highest scores in English, math, and history this year. As you may know, the scores you see for English and math include an average for grades 3 through 5. But what you don't see in that number there, where you see 99%, is that in grade 5, 100% of the students passed the SOL test at Waller Mill for the 2nd year in a row. Additionally, 100% of their 4th graders passed the history SOL. These results also show some areas where we still need to continue to work. As you can see, some of our schools had declines in specific subject areas. Later in my presentation, I will share some of our next steps for planning for improving student performance at the elementary school level and specifically in those schools. This chart provides a glimpse of the AMO performance for our elementary schools. As Dr. Guy shared, this is not part of our state accountability system, but we have provided it here since we do measure this as part of our strategic plan. As you may recall from last year, all of our elementary schools met all of the 18 federal AMOs. This year, we continued to make progress in many areas that fell short of meeting some of those AMOs. On this chart, you'll see marked in green the areas where our AMOs improved by 2 or more percentage points from FY15. We're proud that every school made progress in at least 4 subcategories this year. On a special note, I'd like to direct your attention to Coventry and Dare Elementary Schools. Coventry made gains in 14 of the 18 subgroup categories, with 6 of those being double-digit gains. As you may recall, last year, Coventry used a 3-year trailing average to meet AMO for Gap Group 2 in math. This year, Coventry made an 18 percentage point increase in this area. Dare improved in 13 of the 18 subgroups this year, with their biggest gain being with limited English proficiency population. The AMO data also shows that we still have work to do in the area of students with disabilities in 3 of our schools, and additionally, Magruder and Yorktown missed several AMOs in English performance this year. Later in my presentation, I'll provide you with some strategies that we've used to identify to improve student performance in those schools. Now I'd like to share some information regarding our grade 3 reading goal, which states that by FY17, 90% of all 3rd grade students will be reading at or above grade level as measured by our standards of learning assessments. This chart shows the division's growth from FY14 to FY15, FY14 to FY16 in grade 3 reading. In FY15, the benchmark for grade 3 reading was set at 85%, and 8 out of our 10 schools met this benchmark. This was great progress from the year before when no elementary schools met that goal. This year, the benchmark was moved to 87.5%, which you can see the black line that goes across the screen. As you can see, our division average was 88%, and 6 of our 10 schools met the benchmark. 2 schools, Bethel Manor and Mount Vernon, missed the benchmark by less than 1 percentage point. Coventry Elementary School achieved double-digit gains this year with an increase in 19 percentage points. Both Magruder and Yorktown Elementary Schools showed declines in grade 3 reading this year, and I want to share that I am working very closely with those principals to make sure we address those concerns and work to ensure that those students who did not pass are prepared and ready for 4th grade this year. This slide provides cohort data for our elementary students who are now in grade 6. So the blue bars on this chart show our grade 3 reading scores from FY14. Our average performance that year was 75%, and as you may recall, none of our schools met our goal that year of 82.5%. The green bar shows cohort data, so it's those same students, we're looking at their performance in grade 4. The division average improved by from 75% in grade 3 to 89% in grade 4, which is a 14 percentage point increase. Finally, I'd like you to take a look at the purple bar. So that bar shows cohort data for those same students and their performance last year on the grade 5 reading. The division average was 91%, which was an increase of 16 percentage points from when those students began in grade 3. So as you can see from the information that we've shared this evening, we have a lot to be proud of in our elementary schools. The information on the slide was shared with you during our presentation last year, and many of those strategies have been very successful, so we've continued many of them into this year. On this slide, you'll see several other strategies that we have continued this year, and the last bullet mentions our Junior Great Books program. This program works to raise the comprehension and performance of students by teaching them to read and think critically. In an effort to encourage our students to become strategic readers, we have purchased the Junior Great Books program for use in our literacy model. And this past year, we trained a cohort of teachers on that program, and this year we're pleased to share that we're going to be training another cohort of teachers. I also think it's important to note that many of the items that you saw on these last 2 slides are items that this school board has approved for purchase during the last 2 to 3 years. Our teachers and staff truly appreciate the high quality aligned materials that we've been able to provide to them to use in the classroom. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about what are our next steps at the elementary school level. We know that our schools are continuing to make progress in some areas, but there is still more work to be done. For our schools that experienced a drop in academic performance, we are working hand in hand with them to analyze the causes and provide support and resources for improvement. I'd like to share some of the things that we are putting in place globally as well specifically in some of our schools. One of our top priorities this year is developing a common expectation and vision for professional learning communities. You might hear them referred to as PLCs. This summer we made this a focus of our Leadership Academy, and we will continue to provide training throughout the year and coaching, both at administrator meetings and also in site-based coaching by Mr. Bledu and I. Each summer, our administrative teams present their school improvement plans to the executive leadership team and division administrators. Next year, we plan to invite other schools' administrative teams to attend those presentations. And this year, the administrators collected and analyzed literacy model walkthrough data, and based on their observations, we have identified a need for further training and support in the area of independent reading. Also, this past spring, we did an internal evaluation of our Summer Academy program, and we made some strategic changes to that program to help align it better to our current literacy program during the normal school year. So the first 2 bullets on this slide have to do with the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening, which we often call PALS. PALS is a state-provided screening tool which helps us identify kindergarten through grade 3 students who are not meeting their reading benchmarks so that we can provide interventions in a timely manner. This year, we contracted with the University of Virginia to provide ongoing PALS professional development to identify teachers in specific schools. Traditionally, teachers have not given the PALS assessment at the mid-year mark, except for those students who did not meet that first of the year benchmark. This year, we have decided to give the mid-year PALS assessment to all students in grades K through 2. This change will ensure that students are making expected progress throughout the year while also monitoring the effectiveness of our Tier 1 instruction. In addition, I'd like to share that we made some changes at the elementary administrative teams. We have strategically placed specific staff with experiences so that it would be beneficial for the school. For example, one assistant principal at Magruder is also a licensed reading specialist. Finally, some of our schools have also made some changes to their master schedules to allow reading specialists and other support personnel to push into grade levels versus pulling students out for interventions. For the past year, our teachers and staff have been preparing for this year's implementation of Writers Workshop. During the FY16 school year, our 20 instructional trainers received 92 hours of professional development. All general education classroom teachers received a minimum of 13 hours of professional development. And then to further support our teachers, we offered 72 hours of optional training on Writers Workshop this summer. I am more than pleased to share that we had 185 teachers and administrators participate in that training, and it's optional training this summer. So there is a tremendous amount of research that supports writing and the positive impact it has on reading. We know that by making our students stronger writers, we're also making them more strategic readers. This slide is a summary of several of the items I discussed earlier in my presentation. As I conclude, I'd like to recognize Bethel Manor Elementary School, who was selected as one of only 2 schools in the state of Virginia to earn the distinction of National Title I Distinguished School, and one of only 9 Virginia schools to earn the honor of Title I Highly Distinguished School. Dare Elementary School was also recognized as a Title I Distinguished School this year. Now I'd like to turn this over to Tony Vladu, who will provide an update on our secondary school performance.
Before we get to that, can we?
Question.
Oh, it's your question. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
I have a couple, but if you want to go first, go ahead.
You can first.
Two things. Students with disabilities. I've always thought and felt and I'm going to use budget time. When it comes down to budget is automatically taken, that's where it's mandated. So I guess I was concerned that we're having problems with students in that category. And I probably shouldn't equate budget with success rate, but I guess I do, because we know that when we sit down to do a budget off the top, special needs, it's a part of it. But we're having concerns with that, and that's uneasy for me. That's one. And the other one, I look at the decline in Magruder and Yorktown Elementary, 2 about problem schools with higher populations. And what is there a relationship with the crowdedness in those 2 schools and the decline that we saw in grade 3 reading?
So to address the first question in regards to special education, one of the things I mentioned earlier was about the resources that you've provided over the last 2 to 3 years. We have, and Dr. Guy and Dr. Gould may be able to provide additional information, but we've provided our teachers with a number of interventions that are research-based interventions. We're still in the process of training our teachers in the use of some of those. And I feel like that, coupled with the training that we do for a tiered system of interventions, that we are addressing those concerns. I feel like we just need more time to work through that process in our professional learning communities to make sure that we are really aligning our instruction and that we are meeting, in our elementary schools, we meet on a weekly basis in grade levels to really make sure that we are looking at those students that are not maybe understanding the information, and that we are quickly providing interventions to those students. And that's a learned process that we are working on as a division. And to answer your second question in regards to the size of the schools, they are our 2 larger schools, that is correct, but their class sizes are commensurate with class sizes in other schools. So while there is multiple use of some places like cafeterias and things like that, we do provide additional interventions in those buildings. We provide additional reading specialists. We also provide a community liaison. There's certain things that we do bring to those schools that other schools do not have. And so really it's a matter of us coming together as a team and working one-on-one with those schools to help make sure that we are not missing any students.
And that's the point I think I need to hear, that what we're doing, that we're not missing any students. I think for me, and I've said this throughout the summer, we have 10 elementary schools. Each one is very, very different. Each one is composed of the community which is housed in. So we can't change that outside community. We
Right.
have to step up to the plate with what comes into our school and how we handle it. So that's where, to say that the two of our largest ones we had declined, that's a concern, but.
And to
anybody-
piggyback, Barbara, because I know that sometimes the question I get asked and you don't know how to answer the question, because I do remember when we took Yorktown and Magruder, and, we dropped the ratios of classroom to student, teacher to student. I mean, it was really low at both schools, and we did purposeful with a thread of, we were trying to provide what was needed at that time for those two schools, and we saw success. And so people remind me of that sometimes of, well, now we have a space and capacity issues and things that we just can't do that because we don't have classrooms for right now. But still that question gets asked, can a student perform or learn more or better or grasp concepts better when you have 15 kids in a room versus the 25 or the 26, and it starts bumping up. But on the other side of that coin is how the team, the building, and everyone works together, and the resources, everybody pulls those students, even though there's 25 in a classroom, they have the same opportunities to be successful. But when you try to explain that to somebody, it's difficult sometimes because the rationale, and a lot of people think that when you put less kids in class, they're going to do better. But hearing you talk about the fact that they have actually, y'all deployed more resources, populations are changing, so we're identifying strategic, or surgical things sometimes with students with needs or special needs and such. But the success is still there for a student to do well. And if someone's struggling, we have the resources in place to step up and do something about it. But still, it's just the growing pains of those two schools. It does raise a little flag
And
going.
history will tell you that third grade is that do or die grade.
Oh, exactly.
They build jails on third grade reading levels. Whether you want to accept it or not, that happens. So that's a concern to me, so.
Now, special education, I want to piggyback on that one too. That population seems to change a lot from year to year in YCSD. We're that compassionate district that people find out about, and that's where I want to go. If they have a child with special needs, does that skew sometimes the information we receive because new students arrived with a 504 or they get to an eligibility where they already have an IEP? Can that affect what we're looking at?
It's important when we are a large military population
Yes.
as well, so we have children that come from all over the world to us, which is just wonderful. We work very closely with our teachers to help them. We provide them with assessments where they can quickly identify where a student might have missed a piece of instruction, and then we have the right tools in place to provide that quickly to them. For our students with special education needs, it's a matter of continually monitoring them daily and weekly to make sure as we're moving along in the curriculum, they were quickly finding out if they didn't understand it and then providing an intervention as soon as possible. And that's what those professional learning communities, those weekly meetings will do for our schools. Coupled with that, it's also important that when they're doing this, that we look at the data to see where did we maybe miss something as far as the standard goes. The state provides us this year with that information. And so making sure that we're going in and reteaching those teachers in that particular standard is also just another piece of that. There's a lot of layers to it. I will tell you that I will be working hand in hand, one-on-one with those schools this year to make sure that we are monitoring those students.
It's also important to look at slide 14 again, which was the cohort data. So Yorktown Elementary in 2014, third graders were at 66, 67%, and those fifth graders last year were 85%. So I think that's something that plays into this as well.
First, I think we have a report that we can take so much pride in these results. I think, as Stephanie said, the students, the teachers, staff, administrators, and parents and families have worked extremely hard And we can be very proud in these results. There's always more work to do as we
Always.
strive for, hate to say perfection,
Perfection.
but I feel really, really good about seeing how we are tracking and assessing achievement and growth. So I want to commend you for that. I want to look at the reading growth slide for grades 3 to 5. So you were telling me that this shows me the same class as they were in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. Is that right?
Yes, it's a cohort group.
Okay. What are we doing when we see, oh, wow, maybe the scores or the level is stagnant, or I don't think anybody has dropped. They may have stayed stagnant, but no one has dropped, have they? So but are we looking at those students who may be on the same reading level in 5th grade as they were in 4th grade? What are we doing about those students to make sure that they enter middle school on track?
Right. We, as I had talked a little bit earlier, first of all, we want to make sure that we're providing the right instructional program in the classroom. And so a couple years ago, I came and talked about our new literacy model and the work that we're doing there. We provide time within our literacy block. We've increased our time in the literacy block, first of all, but we make sure that there is a dedicated guided reading time, and our teachers are using materials that are aligned. They also do informal running records with their students to make sure that they are making progress. And quickly, if they are not, they're talking with a reading specialist to get some assistance with that. And then we're tracking their progress from year to year. Some schools also have grade level meetings from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade where they look at those, or K to 5, excuse me, where they're looking to make sure those standards are aligning and that those students are making progress. Does that answer your question?
It does. You've identified the students that have either stayed at the same grade level in reading or they've perhaps dropped. You've identified them and they are receiving help so that they stay on track.
Right. We have we use our data walls as well as an internal database called Reading Progress Monitoring System, and we actually progress monitor our students from kindergarten all the way to middle school. And so Chrissy Wagner, myself, our Title I teachers, our reading specialists go in and we look at that data constantly. Each quarter, we're making sure that those students are making progress. And then through our data walls, which we look at, some schools look at those weekly, some look at those like every other week. We're looking and pulling that live data. We call it live data, like
Fresh data.
fresh data, thank you, fresh data. We're looking at that fresh data to quickly see what's going on.
Can you share just real quick, just to describe a data wall? Just
Sure.
What does that look like?
So we, through our reading progress monitoring system, we pull key pieces of information out. So we're looking at what their Rigby level was. We're looking at what possibly their PAL score was. We're also looking at what interventions they received. We're looking to see if the child is a child who has special education interventions. We put all of that onto a data wall, and then we place those students at on, below, and above grade level. And so the grade level comes together with the reading specialist, with the special ed teachers, and with the administrators weekly, and then sometimes we're looking at that data quarterly as well. And they're looking to see where those students are progressing. And so when we look to see if we have a group of students that are below grade level, we're making sure each of those students have an intervention that they are receiving. And that's why we have the reading specialist and the special ed teacher in there. Sometimes Ms. Wagner is in there. Sometimes we have other staff members in there to support them. And we're making sure that we don't miss those students. But we do, it's an internal, our teachers put data in every quarter, and then it follows that child all the way through to middle school.
And it doesn't sound like it's just test.
No,
And that's
it's
the
not
thing
just
about it,
that.
because the state is saying we need to redo, yeah.
That
Actually,
was going to be my next question, because while I think assessment is most important to make sure that our students are growing, because that's the objective, that's what we want, to make sure that they are growing in education. We don't want it to be assessment, assessment,
Correct.
assessment. So how do you balance giving them an assessment test every day versus giving them the instruction in a way where they learn it and love it and grow?
And those small guided reading groups, when a teacher's meeting with a guided reading group, it's usually about 6 students, usually it's the max. they are interacting on a personal level with those students during that guided reading lesson. And so they are actually, while we don't do round robin anymore, what we do is, each student may be reading out loud, but the teacher's listening to that one particular student read, and they're taking like a little running record, and they do that over and over and over throughout the year. So they really have a personal relationship when it comes to literacy with our children. And that's just some of the training that we've done, and we've purchased materials to allow that to happen in our classrooms. So that's just one small way that we make sure that we're not focusing just on tests and assessments. Writing's going to be very exciting for us this year. I think writing's also going to provide us with some opportunities to really look at our students and look at their writing skills.
One last comment. I just want to give a shout out to Coventry Elementary School because I know they have worked extremely hard this year, and we are very proud of their scores.
Yes, we are proud. Yes, we are, of all of our schools. And do you have any other questions for me?
Thank you.
Next.
Yes.
Good evening, and keeping with the gains at the school division and elementary level, tonight I'm proud to report that based on preliminary data, all of our middle schools are also fully accredited. Additionally, I want to share a few highlights. 3 of 4 middle schools show growth in English and science. Also, 2 of 4 middle schools have pass rates exceeding 90% in 3 of 4 subject areas. It is important to remember that accreditation results for English and math reflect the performance for several grade levels. As such, what you don't see in these numbers is the performance of each grade level. To that end, I want to share that grade 8 math at Yorktown Middle School increased by 10 percentage points, while grade 7 reading at Queens Lake Middle School increased by 14 percentage points. You may recall last year that none of our middle schools met all AMO targets. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that preliminary performance reports indicate that Tabb Middle School and Yorktown Middle School met all 18 reading and math AMO targets. Additionally, the areas highlighted in green on the slide represent areas of growth of 2 percentage points or more. As you can see, all of our middle schools show growth in the reading performance of all students, as well as Gap Group 3 Hispanic students. However, as you can also see, Grafton Middle School and Queens Lake Middle School missed the AMO target in reading for Gap Group 1. Also, Queens Lake Middle School missed the AMO target in reading for Gap Group 2 and students with disabilities. Later in this presentation, I will address the action steps to meet this need. I also want to highlight some additional gains. Grafton Middle School and Yorktown Middle School demonstrated growth in at least 6 of 9 AMO subgroups for reading. Tabb Middle School showed the greatest growth in every single AMO group. When it comes to the reading performance of our students with disabilities, while 3 or 4 middle schools made growth, Yorktown Middle School increased by 17 percentage points, while Tabb Middle School increased by 19 percentage points. As it relates to the improvement of our English language learners in reading, Queens Lake Middle School increased to almost 12 percentage points, while Tabb Middle School increased by 15 percentage points. Now I would like to review the middle school math AMO performance. As this chart shows, our schools made growth in most of the AMO areas over the past year. However, Queens Lake Middle School missed the AMO targets in math of Gap Group 2 and students with disabilities. As we return to highlighting the growth our students made in math, both Grafton Middle School and Yorktown Middle School improved the math AMO performance of students in at least 6 of 9 subgroups. As this chart also shows, all of our middle schools improved the performance of students with disabilities, with increases ranging from 5 to 15 percentage points. Additionally, our English language learners increased their math performance at Yorktown Middle School by 10 percentage points, while Queens Lake Middle School increased by 14 percentage points. As you may remember, last year, 2 or 4 middle schools met the AMO target for students with disabilities in math, and this year, 3 or 4 middle schools met this important benchmark. As I conclude the update on our middle school, this slide is a summary of the progress we made. A new year brings new goals and new challenges. Our middle schools have used this data to celebrate success and develop plans for continuous improvement. Tonight, I'm also pleased to report that based on preliminary data, all of our high schools will be fully accredited. Now, I would like to share a few highlights represented in this chart. 5 of 5 high schools show growth in English, and all of our high schools have English performance exceeding 90%. Additionally, all of our high schools show growth in mathematics. I'm also pleased to report that all of our high schools increased the graduation and completion index over the previous year. Our greatest growth was at Bruton High School, which increased by 5 percentage points. Lastly, Grafton High School has a graduation completion index of 99%, while York River Academy continues to be at 100%. When it comes to high school AMO reading performance, all schools met the targets for all subgroups. Additionally, high school reading performance has also increased over the past year. This chart also shows that Tabb High School showed growth in 6 of 9 AMO subgroups. I also want to highlight some additional gains. At Bruton High School, the reading performance for Gap Group 3 Hispanic students increased by more than 16 percentage points. Also at Bruton High School, economically disadvantaged students have increased the performance of their English to more than 91%. At York High School and Grafton High School, the reading performance of students with disabilities increased by 9 and 13 percentage points respectively. Lastly, at Grafton High School, the reading performance for Gap Group 2 Black students increased by almost 9 percentage points over the previous year. As it relates to our AMO performance in math, our high schools show growth of 2 or more percentage points in 13 of 45 areas. I'm also pleased to report that 4 of our schools have more than exceeded the AMO targets for all subgroups. Bruton High School missed the AMO for students with disabilities. Later in the presentation, I will share with you the next steps in addressing this need. As you may remember, Gap Group 1 includes students with disabilities, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged students, regardless of race and ethnicity. 3 of 5 schools made gains for Gap Group 1 students. Among these, Grafton High School increased the math performance for Gap Group 1 by 7 percentage points, while York River Academy increased by almost 17 percentage points. When it comes to the performance of our economically disadvantaged students in math, Grafton High School increased by almost 16 percentage points, while York River Academy increased by 36 percentage points. As you may remember, whereas last year, one of our schools used R10 to meet the Federal Graduation Indicator AMO target for students on free and reduced lunch, this year none of our schools needed R10 to meet any of the AMO benchmarks. Also, it is important to remember that the Federal Graduation Indicator is reported 1 year behind. As this chart shows, there is a lot of growth to celebrate. While all of our schools show growth in 1 or more areas, York High School showed the greatest growth. Among the areas of growth at York High School, the Federal Graduation Indicator for students with disabilities increased by 22 percentage points. Our schools have worked hard to increase the graduation rates for all students over this past year. These gains are expected to be reflected in next year's numbers. More importantly, a greater number of students are able to graduate as a result of the work of our schools. So, to what do we attribute our growth? All of our secondary schools have presented the results of their school improvement plans during the summer. Our schools have cited their growth to several factors. Power School assessments, formerly known as On Track, have helped principals, teachers, and students have valuable data to determine the impact of instruction on student learning, make the necessary adjustments, and provide timely assistance. Several of our schools participated in the tier system of support over this past year. The implementation of this system resulted in sustained gains. Similarly, schools attributed academic lab structures to their growth. Academic lab structures at the secondary level provide scheduled class time for students with disabilities to receive additional support. Lastly, greater collaboration and the use of effective teaching models for teams of teachers serving students with disabilities is cited for the growth our schools have made over the past year. At this time, I would like to take a few moments to discuss our next steps. School leaders, teachers, and staff are the key to unlocking the potential of all students. In addition to using staff expertise to professional learning communities, Tier 1 instruction in reading and writing will be addressed through the continued implementation of the secondary literacy model. This summer, Dr. Vika Stevenson led a middle school literacy academy that was attended by more than 2/3 of middle school English teachers. Over the course of 4 days in August, teachers learned about the new middle school English curriculum and high-impact teaching strategies. Teachers commented about the high-quality professional development that included literacy experts such as Meredith Alvaro. We also want to improve the use of the LLI, or Level Literacy Intervention, this year at the secondary level. This program provides teachers with interventions to help our lowest achieving students. Some of the highest gains were made by schools that were able to implement this program with fidelity. Over the course of this year, our schools will improve the use of LLI through scheduling and monitoring progress. 2 additional interventions will be used by schools that missed the AMO targets in mathematics or those that choose to opt in. As you may remember, last year we began the implementation of VMath and TransMath. Both of these interventions meet students where they are and provide specific assistance to master learning objectives. At this time, I would like to take a moment to review our Advanced Diploma Goal 1 objective.
Before you move that far, do you all have any questions about secondary?
One just about a definition. How is GCI? What are the parameters of that, the period? What goes into that indicator?
There is quite a bit of difference between the FGI and the CGI, whereas the FGI is a simple numerator denominator. The FGI, where you look at the number of folks that are entering the 9th grade and they graduate on time. The CGI looks at a variety of other factors. For instance, when students graduate on time, you get 1 point. When students, for instance, transfer to, let's say they go into one of our GED programs for one reason or another, you get a certain amount of points. So there's a formula that the state provides that looks at all those factors of what happens to students. And I think essentially it's important that their education continues, even though perhaps there may be some things that got in the way. So it looks at several of those factors.
Okay.
And Mr. Blyde, if I can add, the GCI also counts other diploma statuses. For example, FGI, the Federal Graduation Indicator, only counts advanced studies and standard diploma, whereas the GCI will include the special diploma status for students with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. And it's still just a 4-year period. It's not like 5.
It is a cohort.
Okay.
It looks at the cohort.
But there isn't like any weird 5-year.
Even with FGI, they allow you to look at 5-year cohort data. In other words, you can look at, because one of the things that they want is that your students aren't dropping out.
Mm-hmm.
So that the student who is continuing and graduates in the following year, that data is you also capture that.
Okay.
Yeah, you get a point value on a CGI, for instance, if a child comes back the 5th year to continue rather than the full point. So all those are adjusted based on the formula.
Thank you.
Thank you. The gray bars on this chart indicate the annual benchmarks in order to meet this goal. And again, just as a reminder, we're looking at our FY17, the percentage of high school graduates earning the Advanced Studies Diploma out of the total number of diplomas awarded. So the blue bars indicate the percentage of advanced and IB diplomas awarded. As you can see, over the past 3 years, performance on this goal remains unchanged. This year, though we had 30 more students earn the advanced or the IB diploma, we had a larger graduating class, resulting in no change to the proportion of advanced diplomas awarded. It is important to remember that there are many factors that contribute to earning the advanced studies or IB diplomas. Over the coming days, I will share this data with our secondary school counselors and principals in order to identify both opportunities and barriers that we may address in increasing the proportion of advanced and IB diplomas our students earn.
I have questions about this, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I looked at this and I really was not that concerned that the statistics were pretty stagnant the last 3 years. And the reason is because I was hopeful that the 35% were receiving certifications through New Horizons or going that track. And I think that's important. I was also wondering, as far as the strategic plan is concerned, we have to monitor what the state is doing as they redesign what the high school system is supposed to look like. And I think that will also affect these numbers moving forward.
That's very important. As of next year, all of our students graduating on a standard diploma will need, are required to have one industry certification. And also, at York High School, for instance, at the largest, they inducted the largest IB class this year has been significantly larger, which those numbers are going to come due in several years. But those are two factors that may address that.
Do we know what the percentage is as far as these students who are receiving the standard diploma? Do we know the percentage receiving certifications through New Horizons? If at least half of those students were going to New Horizons, I would feel pretty comfortable about these numbers. Do we have any idea or any way to
Over
find
the
out?
coming days, we'll look at that data. I think last year, for instance, we had 72% of our students have at least one industry certification. So, but we could look at that data and determine the number of our students that are using the standard diploma to relate that to their industry certifications.
Super, thank you.
We'll try to get that in Friday notes.
Okay.
Next, I'll review the school performance in meeting the FY13 Advanced Placement Exam benchmark. The table you are now seeing represents the advanced placement trend data. The blue, green, and purple columns represent changes from the 2013 number of AP exams with scores of 3 or greater. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the area highlighted in gray. The gray row represents the overall status on this goal. As you can see, there are 9% less students who are earning 3 or higher on AP tests than in 2013. However, it is important to note that while there is a reduction of 9% of students earning 3 or higher, there is a proportional reduction in the number of students that choose to take the AP exams. Moreover, these changes are occurring while an increasing number of students are choosing to take the AP classes but choosing not to take the test. Over the next slide, I want to provide some additional factors. As stated, an increasing number of students are choosing not to take the AP tests. So this past year, we administered a survey to students before the administration of AP exams. The pie chart on this slide shows the reason students chose not to take the exam. In interpreting this information, it is important to note that each respondent may have selected more than one reason. For instance, a student may have reported in the affirmative on all of the options listed on the form. So as you look at the pie chart, 9% of all answers were related to the cost of these tests. 15% were related to whether or not the college of choice would award college credit for the AP exam. 20% of responses were related to whether or not the student felt prepared to take the test. Lastly, the area in purple, representing 6% of all answers, were due to other reasons. It is understandable that the area represented in purple does not provide the additional specificity needed in order to understand the totality of student responses. To address this need, we will modify the form over the coming year. Lastly, in examining specific subject area and the associated grade levels, some test participation patterns emerge. For instance, English language composition taught during the 11th grade, the participation in this subject approaches 90%. However, test participation in the literature composition course taught during the 12th grade is at 53%. Participation at the 9th grade level is high, however, with more than 80% of students choosing to take the AP Human Geography AP exam. So at this time, I would like to review the advanced placement next steps for improvement. This past spring, our English, math, science, and social studies coordinators conducted an instructional audit of the advanced placement program at our high schools. Their findings reveal high levels of rigor, alignment, and student engagement across the school division. While there's always room for improving our AP instructional program, this audit confirmed that our AP program provides high-quality instruction. We also need more information. As mentioned, over the coming year, we will modify the AP Test Intent form in order to solicit the diagnostic information needed. Additionally, I plan on having AP student focus groups at each of the schools to learn more from our students who are taking these courses. During the school improvement plan presentations this past summer, Brewton High School shared an effective model for improving student test participation. Students enrolled in AP classes research the colleges they plan on attending in order to determine whether or not they will accept the AP test for college credit. Through this process, students also learned about programs that may subsidize the cost of these tests. Lastly, we'll continue to participate in the state program that reimburses students on free and reduced lunch for the cost of both AP and IB exams. As we conclude this presentation, I want to summarize the gains made at the high school level. Grafton High School, Taft High School, and York High School were awarded the State Board of Education Distinguished Award for narrowing the achievement gap. Though I have shared a few of these achievements, I'm also pleased to report that all of our high schools have earned the Blue Star Award for Financial Literacy given by the WISE organization. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the work of our students, teachers, and school staff. At this time, our team welcomes any questions and comments.
I am very excited that you are reviewing the AP program and working with the instructional staff as well as the students to find out why they're not taking the test. As far as the AP 11 and AP 12 English test, I know from personal experience that if you score a 4 or 5 on the AP 11 test and you're going to Virginia Tech, they're not going to give you any more credit for the AP 12. So I know I did not pay for the AP 12 test for my son because, that's money out of the pocket. And I think a lot of students, if they score what they need to after the AP 11, there's no need to take the test.
And our AP enrollment has gone up quite a bit since that time when I looked at the data. It's exactly that. Our students may elect to take 3 out of 4 AP tests depending on the college they're attending. So I think it's a problem or a concern that has many moving parts to it, and I think it's important to hear directly from the students.
But it really does help those students. If you make a 3, 4, or 5, you could start college as a sophomore or at least have 1 semester up.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing else. We thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we move to staffing report.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. I'm going to have Dr. Carroll, Chief Human Resource Officer, provide a brief human resources report. Dr. Carroll.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Vice Chairman Haywood, members of the board. My purpose tonight is to brief you on various activities from the spring and summer months intended to attract and improve our most important resource, our human resources. First, we start with professional development opportunities. In addition to the voluntary professional development and leadership academies that Mrs. Skinner and Mr. Vladu mentioned earlier, a number of the teachers attended the voluntary professional development were new teachers that we, for the first time, allowed to attend summer training before their normal start date, but they had to volunteer. You got to get that on the record. A brand new 2-day offering was our Operational Institute for building administrators to cover topics such as school law updates, presented by an attorney from Kaufman and Knowles. 13 30-minute interactive sessions chosen by the participants to meet their needs and a collaboration session at the end of the day. We also had a transportation academy that brought in all bus drivers, assistants, and substitutes to cover transportation and safety issues. And our new teacher orientation welcomed 75 new teachers, 20 of them new to the profession, to the division by engaging them in 2 days of onboarding activities centered around both operational and instructional activities. We also reconfigured the first day to respond to evaluative comments from previous years. And our annual professional development day, that's usually in the first week of teachers being back to school, was restructured. We offered over 125 sessions to our teachers, and depending on the length of the ones that they chose, they could go to one, as few as one, and as many as 4. And they were predominantly conducted by our staff, our teachers, with some outside vendor participation. So now I'd like to recap our hiring efforts. Our department, working with the Public Relations Office, redesigned our recruiting efforts last winter and did so based on the latest research on teacher recruitment. In your materials, you'll have a copy of our marketing piece aimed at seniors and teacher preparation programs. The purpose of that piece is to brief prospective new teachers through an engaging format on the most appealing reasons to consider the division and to guide them to our recruiting microsite, which I'd like to show you now. For experienced teachers, possibly looking to the division, the site can also be found on our YSCD website under, if you go to the Employee tab, then go to Prospective Employees, and then Our Story. And you'll find our site. And while that's coming up, I should say that this site, it's important to note that the site has already won 3 awards from 2 organizations, the National School Public Relations Association and Graphic Design USA. And so when a prospective employee comes here, they will see, first of all, pictures that involve our people, not just stock photos. And we're trying to hit those big issues for people, what they're interested in. And you'll see professional administrators and staff, community support, and competitive compensation. And they can go to they just hit read more, and they'll go to either a news story or something, a testimonial from somebody. And then all through the site, you can see where we're directing them to apply. And if I hit this Apply Today button, it takes them right to our SearchSoft page so they can be looking at what are the jobs that are open right now.
How does that work when people go online, and sometimes people say any jobs in York County? Once they go to the website,
Right?
fill out an application.
Right?
Then they'll say maybe another 6 months or 12 months later, say just keep your application updated, and how often?
Well, it's important that when you fill out an application that they're also monitoring it every 2 weeks or so, because once they have that application and they see the jobs are available, all they have to do is click on that individual job, and that puts them in the pool of possible candidates. So when a hiring manager is looking, they're looking at that pool. They're not just looking at our, they can look at the application database as a whole, but they're going to create a certain pool for that job only.
You say hiring manager, specific to the schools or?
Principals, this is for any job, department managers, principals. Okay.
Just one other question. I know now talk about in the past, things are different now, but like if an employee applies for a job that they're have searched for and they've done their application online, and there's hundreds of applications coming in, if not thousands in some cases.
But if I could interrupt, most of our like clerical positions are getting like 150 applications for any given job right now.
How long do we have it in place to where eventually they get a card or something if they're unsuccessful?
They get a letter when the position is closed out.
When it closes, okay.
So as we further scroll down, you'll see different testimonials, a lot of our Teachers of the Year, and you can see if I click on one, then you see the teacher with their testimonial attached. Then we have an infographic on some of those most important things. When you go to a job fair and you talk to young teachers, they want to know that we have a competitive teacher pay plan. They really want to know whether they have a mentor to support them. And then a big one for our younger ones is what kind of technology access do they have. And with our 24/7, that's a real selling point for York County.
As you scroll down, there was a time that, and this shows you how dated I am, that when you go out to recruitment fairs, we were oftentimes missing individuals because we could not hire on the spot. We changed that a few years back, Mark, remember?
I do.
that we appropriate money to the recruiting folk to say, you could hire somebody on the spot with the contingency that we go back and do a records review and so forth and so on. Do you still have that freedom to do that, or is everything, once we get everything in place?
Once we get everything in place, what we've been doing, except for, we opened up our special education hiring because they're so hard to find that as soon as we had openings in the spring, we were posting those positions for the following year. Just that's the way we need to go. It was hard to fill. With other positions, we really didn't have that many open before that we needed to open before we opened hiring for the whole division. If you scroll down a little more, what's most important is our people. And here you'll see these videos that the public relations has been putting together for, we see our own Greg Dolak there, for certain awards that we've given out or the staff spotlight that we've been putting in. And if they want to even know more, you hit the watch more and you see the entire YouTube playlist. So they can really get a feel for what type of people are working here in the division and the type of work they're doing. And then if we scroll down a little more, another testimonial from a teacher, some statistics about the division. And then if you come down a little more, some people don't know where we are. There's a lot of York counties. So it'll scroll through and it'll show you where we are in the world and then where we are in the country and then in the state. And you can see that because they always want to know if we're in South Carolina or Pennsylvania. And then the very subtle appeal to application at the bottom.
That looks good. That looks very good.
Thank you. So we are able to track how many prospective employees are visiting the site. We had roughly 600 visitors to the site this past spring. We will soon be reviewing those statistics, combining them with how many applications we received the days behind certain job fairs, along with reports from our new hires on where they found us in an effort to calculate where our recruiting efforts were most successful this past spring, and then compare them to the costs involved in attending each job fair or advertising piece to compute a return on investment or ROI. And those job fairs with less ROI will either be dropped for another opportunity, or if we feel the need to attend, we will commit less resources and take another look next year. Another next step is evaluating increased use of social media, where earlier this summer we posted 2 job announcements for positions that we still had open. We did that on Facebook, and that yielded almost 2,000 reposts that hit just under 10,000 Facebook accounts. So that's an awful lot of exposure, and we haven't used it a lot. And it's something that we want to explore more next season. Or use technology like a virtual job fair to attract candidates from especially from smaller or more distant preparation programs, as well as revise our HR website as a whole, which is planned to start this fall. And finally, I'd like to share our current hiring status for the division in regard to teaching positions. We have, before I get to that, we actually hired over 20 substitutes this summer, and that has not been happening in recent years. So we're getting a jump on the substitute shortage, and we've already got 1 recruiting class in, and we'll continue. As of today, we have 8 teacher positions open. And of those 8, 6 are in special education that all became vacant or were new allocations after August 19th, which has put us behind the 8 ball a bit. That is the number 1 hardest to fill teaching position right now. Other than that, there was 1 high school chemistry/biology position and 1 middle school math that were both early August openings, and all of these are hard to fill slots. Those principals have long-term substitutes in those classrooms working off lessons plans created by their staffs, and we're combing through applications daily to pull possible candidates in for immediate interview. That concludes my report.
That was kind of a question I had, was that in the world of recruiting for teachers and even any staff in YCSD, as we roll at FY18 and we start talking budget, please let us know, things that we can tweak or do, I would think, that would impact to make YCSD even more attractive to come to. Because I know that, that sometimes the benefits, we've done things that could be having an impact on recruitment possibilities.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is what Mrs. Haywood brought up is getting to them first, and that's a big issue. And the problem we had this year was we just had some late resignations, and they were for a variety of reasons, promotions, medical issues, just some bad luck. And you know, if you're not there early with special ed, you're really going to suffer there.
Do we still do the stipend for
That's what I was going to ask.
the hard-to-fill positions, or do we phase that out?
We have not been currently doing it. We do have, we have been using a stipend for relocation costs for hard-to-fill spots.
And we provide stipends for teachers for like chemistry, is that right?
Yes, there is the variable pay supplement. That's still in the pay plan.
But we do not do that for special ed?
I'm going back to requirements, state and federal requirements that you have to do certain things for special ed. Is there a concern that we are not meeting that population of need?
Well, not yet, and, you know, and we just have a few spots open. By and large, we have our slots filled, and we're serving those students. It is something we're going to have to look at. One of the advantages to living in this area, though, is we do have people moving in often, and we should be able to fill those slots, hopefully, as the fall goes on. And but this is going to be a growing concern just in a lot of areas. I've talked to this board before about the fact that teacher shortage is real. Enrollments in teacher preparation programs are going down, and it's going to become a more competitive marketplace. And that's why we put our emphasis on this recruitment effort last year, and next is really starting to work on retention.
When we advertise positions, though, you're reaching across the country when you look for positions, correct? We're not just focusing on Virginia or Pennsylvania or New York.
But we use different networks, and with the internet, you have that opportunity. But we're not doing job fairs much farther than North Carolina and Pennsylvania right now.
He's asked to go to Hawaii, but we're not approved.
No, but I know there's publications, and there's
there are.
the ability to have technology reach out and to those other universities and colleges that are producing more teachers than what Virginia is producing it in itself. So that's why you find yourself in North Carolina and Pennsylvania.
Right. And one of those things with the ROI is we're looking at the expense of what we're doing with Pennsylvania, and there may be more opportunity in, say, Ohio or Michigan. We're going to be investigating that.
I would, definitely. Because that's a concern, especially in the special ed world, because that one, I would hate to see YCSD or even other school divisions, for that fact, hit critical. And then you backpedal, and what do? You put a regular ed teacher in the classroom, but without the certifications and experiences to meet the needs of the students, you're scrambling.
Many large urban school districts are facing that now.
Yeah, as
They've
they're
been
there.
facing that for a number of years. They're 30 to 40 to 50 special ed teachers short in some of these really large divisions. So 6 is a big number for us, and that's something that we understand and that we need to keep working on. The other thing is, we didn't mention here this evening, is we have a lot of student teachers in our division. So, as those folks come through from various universities, we're paying attention. We're making sure that our principals are, knowing who they are, making sure they're doing a good job and all those types of things. And then we're trying to get our hooks in them, so to speak, so that they can, work in our division. So,
Is there such a thing as you talk with students with experience, getting experience, that we do so much for them in, say, even paying for part of the education to say you'll be in your camp for a period of time afterwards, like other jobs will do something like that?
yeah. Is that something that existed here previously? I know many school divisions across the country used to do that. You'd pay for 1 or 2 classes a semester. I'm not sure of the history on that.
We used to have a tuition reimbursement program that was applicable
Right,
to all
right.
staff.
Right,
But we no longer have that.
But we've never had anything for student teachers where, that we help support them in their student teaching
Right.
program. And we typically get a large number of students from the College of William and Mary that do their student teaching here. CNU, I believe, has a strong pipeline in Newport News and early offers from Newport News. And so We're working, both Mr. Bledu and Ms. Skinner, I think, along with Dr.
Old
Carroll.
Dominion is represented
Went
well.
to CNU last spring,
Right.
so that we can try to develop that pipeline, and the same thing with Old Dominion University.
You almost hate to bring this up, but and I know your connection with ODU, but when you sit there and you ask a student that has a desire, you find, they recruit into the world of teaching, lean them towards the world of special education. They're going to get a master's degree. They're going to spend the time to get those certifications. They're going to spend the money and resources to come out, and then our starting salaries in the world of public education across this country. If they look at that up front, I can see the hesitation with these kids that are going into college and deciding what career they choose, and they look and go, well, if I can just be a regular ed teacher with a bachelor's degree and do it that way, instead of going to further investment and expense to become in the special education world, but still just in the general public education world in itself. I mean, it's just scary. I mean, to think about what you said, and that is the shortage that we're going to start to see year after year, and hard to fill, and then as soon as it's going to become the general to fill, and we got issues.
As far as the substitute teachers for special ed, do they have training in special ed or any kind of certifications, or what are their backgrounds?
I don't know each of the situations. Some do have experience, and I'm aware of it. The principals do a really good job of reaching out and finding something that they know. But some of them are actually certified.
But they may be a mom or dad and they want a flexible schedule, so they just want to substitute.
But when they long-term substitute, they make that commitment to stay for.
Okay. Thank you very much, and now we move down to requests for proposals
Yeah.
update.
Our last item of the evening, I'm going to ask Dr. James, Chief Operations Officer, to share an update regarding our request for proposals.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Ms. Haywood, members of the board, I'm pleased to talk about two requests for proposals. One is the one on adolescent sleep patterns. We're almost there. Last week, we asked the selected vendor for insurance information, and as soon as we get that and that's approved by the assistant county attorney, then we can move forward with a work plan for that particular proposal. The second one is the attendance balancing and bus rider efficiency. Those proposals are due this Friday, the 16th. So we'll review those next week and make a selection. Hopefully we'll get enough people to want to do that work. I know one person did inquire about it, so I'll see where that goes next week, and I can report back as we progress with that particular proposal.
Super.
Good.
This is, Dr. James has been quiet. This is the shortest report we've done in a long
You didn't fall
time.
asleep, did you?
I'll keep them short all year.
Well, thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the evening? If not, we'll be back on the 26th for our regular scheduled meeting, and we are now in need of a closed session. If someone could take us into closed session.
Can we take a short break so we go into closed session?
Yes, we can do that. We can just have a break and then come back and go in closed session. All right, thank you very much.
All right, how many of y'all had board docs shut